Thank you for joining us for 3Bs on the Law podcast, hosted by Trisha Barita, Camille Canali, and Susan Dawson. Disclaimer, this podcast is for entertainment and informational purposes only, not meant to provide legal advice, and does not create an attorney-client relationship. Also remember, laws change or they differ by jurisdiction, so this is not a substitute for seeking legal counsel in your jurisdiction on the current law applicable to you. Welcome back to 3Bs on the Law podcast. And so we're kind of excited to talk today because OSHA has been sort of active lately since President Biden gave them a bunch of authority to start telling us new things about the workplace and making it safer for individuals related to COVID. So guidance was posted January 29th, 2021 called Protecting Workers, Guidance on Mitigating and Preventing the Spread of COVID-19 in the Workplace. Now, a lot of this stuff, actually, all three of us have been chatting about since we started this podcast, because some of it's CDC related or other things that make sense under OSHA, but there's some new stuff in here. And so we're excited to get into it. Camille, do you want to kick us off here?
So sure. So I think the most interesting things is OSHA has come out and given some very great guidance, I think, on masks, because there's been a lot of confusion about what constitutes a mask. And so according to OSHA, your mask has to have 2 layers. So those gaiters that people are wearing, those thin gaiters don't cut the mustard under these OSHA guidelines. And also they've come out and said social distancing and masking are not separate things. You have to mask and socially distance. So that 6 feet rule means you're wearing a mask and you're 6 feet apart. And face shields, I know I've seen a lot of people kind of over the course of this wearing a face shield and no mask. Well, you can wear a mask and a face shield, but not a face shield without a mask. And so I think that's great clarification for employers who are confused about what PPE they've got to provide their employees. And I think, Susan, you were going to talk about some vaccination.
Can I make a comment on the mask before we move on to that? So that's interesting, the face shield thing. First of all, it feels kind of like I would be like on the Jetsons or something, like wearing those face shields. Like the masks aren't already awkward, then you add the face shield on it. But my sister's a doctor, and she's kind of chatted with me about this face shield. I think I have one someone gave me for free, but I didn't go out and buy one. But I think it's talking about it. It's not really protection, just so that people understand from what the medical community is kind of talking about. It's more protection from droplets to coming into like your eyes or something. That's why the mask and the face shield are considered different. And I think that's OSHA wanted to make sure that people understood that, because I think a lot of people just said, oh, this face shield's great because you can still see people talking and still like connect in a different way than when like the mask. Like, let's face it, I don't know if you guys have done this, but I've been wearing the mask and smiled for like a picture and realized they can't see me smile.
We can see you, right?
And then I was like, why did I even put lipstick on? This is ridiculous. So
well, they do have masks that have like LED lights on them, right? That will change while you're talking or will react. So
really?
Yes.
Well, and they have the ones with the clear, you can have the mask with the clear plastic in the center as long as it's surrounded by fabric for, hearing impaired people at your workspace too. So those are fine so long as it's surrounded by fabric, to keep your breath to yourself, so to speak.
Oh yeah. And note that those masks with the hole in them so you put a straw in and have happy hour, that's not OSHA.
Yeah, that's not okay. Those don't work.
No. As cute as they are and funny.
Yes. So I am now, I don't know about you ladies, but I am now acutely aware of brushing my teeth before I leave the house after I've had my coffee.
Oh, really?
I'm putting that mask on because coffee breath is
real.
No bueno. It is real.
Right.
Yeah.
One of the mint companies has a whole commercial on that, right? Like,
do they?
Before you put on your mask. Oh, you haven't seen that? Yeah,
no,
there's a whole commercial on that mask breath is real, right? And pop in a mint before you put your mask on. Yeah.
I'm sure we could go on and on. There are a lot of interesting things about this mask thing.
Yeah, right, for sure. Well, one of the things I noticed with the guidance was they touched a little bit on vaccinations, but not much. One of the things they say is you cannot treat vaccinated employees differently from non-vaccinated employees. So just because you've had the vaccine doesn't mean you don't have to wear a mask. But the thing I found very interesting is that OSHA is coming out and saying that you need to provide information and training to your employees about the pros and cons of vaccinations. So they've come right out and said, you've got to, sorry, not pros and cons, benefits and safety of the vaccinations. They didn't come out and say cons. They said pros.
Yeah.
Right? So they want you to tell your employees about the benefits of vaccinations. So the CDC has recently come out with a toolkit on vaccinations, and that includes a poster that you can put up in your workplace. Whether or not that satisfies OSHA didn't say, but it might be a place to start, right? Putting up that poster.
Is it kind of funny that like it sort of feels like the OSHA is like and the CDC is encouraging it, working together to try to turn every employer into a mini PR firm for the vaccine? Like if you could go out and educate everyone how wonderful this is, because we can see it from the medical community where they're doing that.
Right. What about you, Tricia? What did you find in the guidance that was interesting?
Well, I think we talked about it before, but the workplace coordinator issue that Susan, what episode is that? And that we
have about? Episode 3, disaster plans. We go on and on and on about having a coordinator. And they don't really kind of, say, hey, it would be nice for you to have a workplace coordinator. They're like, everybody should have a workplace coordinator. Like, this is a no-brainer. If if you don't have this in place, then you're really just not like meeting the standard of everybody else. And that's kind of the way I took it. What do you guys think?
Yeah. Listen, I think this is kudos to us because we've been preaching this kind of workplace disaster plans from the very beginning.
Right.
And so actually, I feel like we're ahead of the curve and trendsetters, ladies.
Look at us. Well, I know there's a lot more out there. One of the hot topics was talking about when you should quarantine and when you can go back to work, but that's so detailed that we're going to do a whole nother podcast on that, right? So that'll be coming out, going into more detail on that. What were you going to say, Kamel, on that?
Well, I think also, you also have to be aware of the state and local rules, because now that OSHA has come out with more guidance, I know a lot of states and even local communities, like I know the city of Los Angeles has a whole set of complex rules that you have to follow. So if OSHA weren't enough, you also need to keep checking and updating with your local rules.
Yeah. And Camille, if you could speak a little bit to the part where OSHA talks about, expands into now, which you've had already in California for a while, the reportable the work incident, which wasn't really something that a lot of other states had grasped onto. California grasped onto it pretty early, saying, hey, you could have a reportable work incident event that you needed to report based on COVID. And a lot of people were kind of not really understanding that.
Right. And so in California, if you've had 3 cases over the course of a week, you have to report every case, but there's higher reportable standards for 3 cases. And it's also in California, at least, there is the rebuttable presumption that you caught COVID at work. And so once you start having multiple cases, you have workers' comp claims potentially as well here. And so this is serious business and costly, potentially a costly experience for employers who don't try to follow these guidelines as closely as they can.
Yeah. And so OSHA has now expanded on that, and they're looking at those and expecting some reporting to be done. So employers need to kind of brush up on that.
And they explain, which is good. They talk about when you should be reporting and in what situations. So they come out with some helpful information. I mean, a lot of it's already been out there and they're just reiterating it, but it's great to see that OSHA is applying some CDC guidelines that have been out already.
Yeah, and we may see more. We may see more.
Right. Well, and I don't know, I can't recall if we talked about this in the beginning, but that this guidance includes laws and stuff that's just guidance, right? So what do you do with that, right? How much of it is a law? How much of it is guidance? Does guidance mean we have to follow it? What do you guys think?
So I know, Susan, we were I don't want to say arguing, but we had a bit of a difference of opinion before we
which happens, so we don't always agree.
One of the things
Are you saying that 3 lawyers can't agree on something? Wait, what?
I know. We never disagree. Listen, they call it the practice of law for a reason.
Exactly.
But I think that the OSHA guidelines, while they are just guidelines, ultimately, I think it's going to be seen as the standard of practice for an industry. And so, even if you look, specific industries have even more guidance, like hairdressers, restaurants, than you see just this general guidance here. And so I think that ultimately, while it may not be law and it is put out there as guidance right now, I think ultimately that is going to be found to be the standard of practice in all likelihood.
Can I just jump in here and say that I pretty much in this disagreement kind of aligned with Camille on most of this, except I do agree Susan's reading the
We were saying the same thing.
She's reading the plain reading. Can I just give a shout out to our attorney friend, Jennifer Corso? She was on here. I guarantee you she'd be telling us this is just guidance. And she's a good devil's advocate. Yeah. So,
but they do have President Biden has said that he wants the agency to consider whether any of these temporary guidelines should become actual standards, and they have until March 15th to make that decision. So we'll know more on March 15th on what they're rolling into as permanent.
Well, it may change from COVID guidance to pandemic guidance, right?
Right.
Yeah, I'm kind of calling that the blank check that I think Biden wrote, like that to the OSHA community, saying they could do whatever.
Yeah, we shall see. It's not that far away, so we'll see what happens come March 15th.
Yeah.
Well, that was a really great discussion, I think, guys. A lot of interesting information with the CDC. So thanks everyone for joining us today again on 3Bs on the Law.
Thank you for joining us on today's podcast of 3Bs on the Law. Don't forget to like and subscribe to our podcast. We also welcome any comments. If you'd like to get in touch with us or suggest a future topic, you can email us at 3THREEBsonthelaw@gmail.com. And because we're lawyers, we need to remind you that this podcast is not meant to provide you with legal advice and does not create an attorney-client relationship. Thank you again for joining us, and have a great day.